In the vast and glittering galaxy, the Galactic Council stood as the highest authority. It was a grand assembly of representatives from every major species, working together to maintain peace and order. The Council's decisions shaped the lives of countless beings, and its approval was essential for any major action in the galaxy. Humanity had recently joined this prestigious council. Earth's leaders had worked hard to prove that humans were worthy of a place among the galaxy's elite. The humans brought new perspectives and technologies, adding a fresh energy to the council. For a time, everything seemed hopeful. The galaxy appeared to be on the brink of a new era of cooperation and progress. One of the key figures in this new chapter was Dr. Emily Carter, a bright and dedicated human diplomat. She had worked tirelessly to foster goodwill between humanity and the other council members. Emily believed in the council's mission and had high hopes for what humans could achieve together with the galaxy's other species. But not everyone in the council shared her optimism. Beneath the surface of this grand institution, a shadowy plan was unfolding. A small faction of council members, driven by jealousy and fear, had begun to see humanity as a threat. They feared that humans, with their rapid advancements and relentless drive, might soon surpass them. This faction had a plan. They wanted to sabotage humanity's progress and isolate Earth from the rest of the galaxy. They hoped to weaken human influence before it could grow too strong. Their plan was cunning and cruel. They would secretly work to undermine human achievements, spread false information, and create conflicts where there were none. Emily had no idea about this dark plot. She continued to work hard, believing that all council members were united in their goal of a brighter future. She focused on building alliances and working on joint projects, always optimistic and full of energy. Then one day, something unusual happened. Emily received a mysterious message. It was an anonymous warning suggesting that not everything was as it seemed within the council. The message was vague but ominous, hinting at hidden agendas and betrayal. At first, Emily dismissed it as a prank or a misunderstanding. But the message stayed with her, gnawing at her curiosity. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily began to investigate. She started by reviewing recent council decisions and trying to find any patterns or anomalies. The more she looked, the more she noticed strange inconsistencies. Projects that should have been prioritized were suddenly delayed. Promises made to humanity were being ignored or renegotiated without clear reasons. Emily knew she needed more information. She reached out to her trusted colleagues and allies, asking questions and gathering data. Some were sympathetic to her concerns, while others brushed her off or seemed uneasy about her inquiries. It was clear that the council's atmosphere was growing tense. As Emily dug deeper, she discovered unsettling evidence. There were secret meetings and coded communications that hinted at a coordinated effort to harm humanity. She found documents suggesting that some council members were deliberately sabotaging human missions and spreading false rumors about Earth's capabilities. The realization hit her hard. The council, which she had once believed to be a bastion of unity and cooperation, was deeply divided. A faction was actively working against humanity, and their plans were more advanced than she had feared. Emily faced a difficult choice. If she exposed the betrayal, she risked her own safety and potentially inciting a full-scale conflict. But if she remained silent, humanity could suffer devastating consequences. She knew she had to act quickly to protect her people. After careful consideration, Emily decided to warn humanity. She knew that getting the message out would be challenging. The council's faction was powerful, and they would likely try to silence her. But she couldn't ignore the danger that loomed over Earth. She contacted trusted contacts on Earth and within allied species, delivering her warning in a secure and discreet manner. The message was clear but cautious. The Galactic Council's plans are not what they seem. Be prepared for potential danger. Act quickly and cautiously. The response was mixed. Some took the warning seriously and began preparing for possible threats. Others were skeptical, struggling to believe that such a respected institution could be so deceitful. Emily's message stirred a sense of urgency, but it also caused confusion and fear. Meanwhile, the faction within the council was not idle. They quickly became aware of the leaked information and began taking steps to cover their tracks. They tightened security, manipulated records, and tried to discredit Emily's warnings as baseless claims from a paranoid diplomat. As tensions rose, the Council's public face continued to present an image of unity and progress. But behind closed doors, the plot against humanity deepened. The Council's actions became more aggressive and underhanded, aiming to disrupt human efforts and isolate Earth further. Emily watched with growing concern as the situation unfolded. She had hoped for a swift resolution, but the path to uncovering the full extent of the betrayal was fraught with danger and resistance. Her warning had set things in motion, but the fight for humanity's survival was just beginning. The betrayal of the Galactic Council had been revealed, but the struggle to protect humanity and secure their place in the galaxy was far from over. Emily knew that the coming days would be critical, and she had to stay vigilant and determined. The future of humanity depended on it. The discovery. Emily Carter's heart raced as she sifted through the documents on her desk. The anonymous message she had received seemed to have uncovered a troubling truth, but she needed more evidence to be certain. Her office, once a place of hopeful discussions and plans, had become a room of tension and uncertainty. The Galactic Council was known for its complexity, with layers of bureaucracy and hidden agendas. Emily had always admired its efficiency, but now she saw it in a new light. She realized that behind the polished facade of unity, there were dark currents working against humanity. Determined to get to the bottom of it, she started by analyzing the Council's recent decisions that had negatively impacted human projects. The more Emily examined, the more she noticed a pattern. Critical human missions were delayed or obstructed for vague reasons. Funding for important projects was mysteriously cut. She compared this with the Council's public statements, which painted a picture of smooth operations and continued support for humanity. The discrepancy was alarming. Her investigation took a turn when she found a series of encrypted communications. These messages, though heavily coded, seemed to involve high-ranking council members. Emily knew she couldn't decode them on her own, so she reached out to Dr. Raj Patel, a trusted colleague and an expert in cryptography. Raj was initially hesitant, knowing the risks involved, but he trusted Emily and agreed to help. They worked together in secrecy, decoding the messages over several nights. The truth they uncovered was chilling. There was a deliberate effort to undermine humanity's progress. The messages spoke of strategies to discredit human achievements and secretly sabotage their efforts. One night, as they reviewed the decoded messages, Raj's face grew pale. "Emily, this is worse than we thought. They're planning more than just delays. They're coordinating to create false incidents that will frame humans as unreliable and dangerous." Emily's mind raced. The Council's faction wasn't just stalling human projects, they were setting humanity up for failure. Their goal was to turn other species against Earth, to isolate and weaken it from within. The stakes had never been higher. They had to act fast. Emily and Raj decided to bring the evidence to their most trusted allies. They met in a secure, hidden location, where they presented their findings. The allies, including several influential figures from different species, were shocked and concerned. They had heard rumors of discontent within the Council, but had never imagined it was this serious. The allies, while supportive, were also apprehensive. The Council was powerful, and openly opposing it could lead to severe repercussions. They debated their options, weighing the risks of publicizing the information versus the danger of remaining silent. Meanwhile, the Council's faction became aware that their secret might be at risk. They began taking steps to protect themselves and discredit any dissent. Emily noticed increased surveillance and sudden disappearances of those who had been outspoken about the Council's decisions. It was clear that the faction was desperate to maintain their hold on power. Emily and her allies decided that the best course of action was to gather more evidence and prepare for a decisive move. They began documenting every instance of sabotage and deceit, building a comprehensive case against the faction. They also reached out to sympathetic council members who might be willing to stand up against the corruption. One evening, as Emily reviewed the latest batch of documents, she received a warning. One of her contacts, an anonymous informant within the Council, had sent a message, "They're getting suspicious. You're in danger. Be careful." The warning was a stark reminder of the risks they faced. Emily took extra precautions, altering her routine and avoiding any suspicious behavior. Raj, too, became more cautious, ensuring their communication was secure. Despite the danger, Emily remained focused. She knew that exposing the betrayal was crucial, but it required careful planning. The evidence they had gathered was compelling. but it needed to be presented in a way that could withstand the Council's attempts to discredit it. As days passed, the tension in the Council chambers grew. Rumors of unrest and internal conflict spread, causing unease among the representatives. The faction continued their efforts to sabotage humanity, but the growing whispers of dissent made them more cautious. Emily and Raj worked tirelessly, their efforts driven by a sense of urgency and duty. They were determined to ensure that humanity's voice was heard and that the Council's deceit was exposed. The discovery of the Council's betrayal was a significant step, but it was just the beginning. Emily knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges and dangers. The Council's faction was powerful, and they would not take kindly to being exposed. But Emily and her allies were ready. They had gathered the evidence, built their case, and prepared for the fight ahead. The next steps would be critical in determining the future of humanity in the galaxy. The struggle to protect Earth and its place among the stars was far from over, and Emily was determined to see it through to the end. The warning. Emily Carter paced back and forth in her small, dimly lit office. The room was cluttered with data pads, printed reports, and empty coffee cups. She had spent days gathering evidence of the Galactic Council's betrayal, but now came the hardest part, delivering the warning to humanity. Her thoughts raced. The message she had discovered was clear, but making others believe it and act on it would be a challenge. The Council's faction was powerful, and they would not take kindly to being exposed. Emily knew she had to be careful. The first step was to contact trusted figures on Earth. She drafted a message explaining the situation, but the words felt heavy and uncertain. She had to strike the right balance between urgency and caution. If she sounded too alarmist, she risked being dismissed. If she was too vague, she might not convey the gravity of the situation. After several drafts, Emily finally settled on a clear and straightforward message. She made sure it included specific details about the Council's plans and the immediate steps humanity needed to take to prepare for potential danger. With the message ready, Emily reached out to her most trusted contacts. She chose secure channels to prevent the Council from intercepting the communication. Each contact was someone she knew would take the threat seriously and had the means to spread the warning discreetly. As she sent out the messages, Emily felt a mix of fear and hope. She knew that once the word was out, there would be no turning back. The Council's faction would likely intensify their efforts to silence her and disrupt humanity's response. Within hours, the messages reached Earth and several allied species. The reaction was swift and varied. Some leaders and officials read the message with grave concern. They quickly began taking steps to assess the threat and prepare for possible conflicts. They initiated emergency meetings and started reviewing their defense plans. However, not everyone reacted with immediate urgency. Some dismissed the message as a misunderstanding or an overreaction. They argued that Emily's warnings might be based on incomplete or distorted information. The Council's public image was still one of integrity and cooperation, and some people found it hard to believe that such a respected institution could be so deceitful. Emily followed up with her contacts, trying to gauge the response and address any doubts. She spoke with officials and leaders, explaining the evidence and emphasizing the need for precaution. The more she talked, the more she realized how deeply the Council's influence had penetrated every level of governance. Meanwhile, the Council's faction was on high alert. They had detected the leak and were scrambling to contain the damage. They intensified their efforts to discredit Emily, spreading false rumors about her motives and questioning her credibility. They also tightened their control over information, making it harder for others to verify the truth of the warning. Emily and her allies faced growing challenges. They had to navigate a web of misinformation and resistance while trying to keep the message clear and impactful. They worked tirelessly, coordinating with their contacts to ensure the warning reached as many people as possible and that preparations were underway. In a quiet corner of the Council chambers, some members began to question the legitimacy of the Council's actions. A few were quietly supportive of humanity and concerned about the faction's behavior. These members started to gather information and look for ways to counter the faction's plans. They provided Emily with additional insights and support, though they had to be careful not to draw too much attention to themselves. As the days passed, the tension in the galaxy grew. Earth and its allies were on edge, preparing for potential conflict while trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. The council's faction, realizing that their plans were unraveling, began taking more aggressive actions. They increased their attempts to isolate humanity, creating false incidents and spreading misinformation to further sow distrust. Emily and Raj Patel continued their efforts, working around the clock to manage the response and counter the faction's tactics. They knew that the council's faction was desperate and would stop at nothing to maintain their power. The stakes were high, and the future of humanity hung in the balance. Despite the challenges, Emily remained determined. She had done everything she could to warn humanity and prepare them for the coming danger. The response had been mixed, but there was a growing sense of urgency and resolve among those who had taken her warning seriously. As the situation continued to evolve, Emily knew that the next steps would be crucial. The Council's faction was powerful and resourceful, but humanity's resilience and ingenuity were equally strong. The struggle to protect Earth and secure its place in the galaxy was far from over. Emily took a moment to reflect on the journey so far. She had faced immense challenges and dangers, but she remained steadfast in her mission. The fight to expose the Council's betrayal and ensure humanity's survival was ongoing, and she was prepared to see it through to the end. With renewed determination, Emily focused on the task ahead. The warning had been delivered, and the response was underway. The future was uncertain, but Emily knew one thing for sure. Humanity would not face this threat alone. The struggle to protect Earth and its place in the galaxy was a battle that would define the course of history. The Council's reaction. The Galactic Council's chambers were abuzz with activity. The usual hum of discussion and debate had turned into a cacophony of alarm and outrage. News of the leaked warning had reached every corner of the Council, and the once unified assembly was now divided and on edge. Council members shuffled in and out of meetings, their faces etched with worry and frustration. The faction responsible for the betrayal had been caught off guard by the leak. They had worked so carefully to keep their plans hidden, but now their deceit was threatening to unravel. At the center of the turmoil was Councillor Zalor, the leader of the faction. Zalor was a tall, imposing figure with sharp eyes and a stern demeanor. His reputation as a strategist and negotiator had made him one of the most respected figures in the council, but now his name was synonymous with treachery. Zalor gathered his inner circle in a secure room, far from prying eyes and ears. The mood was tense and the air was thick with anxiety. The councillors sat in a semicircle, their expressions grim as they discussed their next move. "We underestimated them," Zalor said, his voice low and steely. "The humans have been more resilient than we anticipated. Our plans are at risk of exposure." One of his aides, a sleek reptilian being named Sarek, spoke up. "The warning has caused a stir. Many are taking it seriously. We need to act quickly to control the situation." Zalor nodded. "We need to discredit the warning and neutralize those spreading it. If we let this continue, our entire strategy could collapse." The councillors discussed various tactics to counter the leak. They considered spreading misinformation, increasing surveillance, and using their influence to turn other species against humanity. They knew that if they acted swiftly and decisively, they might still be able to salvage their plans. Meanwhile, Emily Carter was on high alert. She had received reports of increased activity within the council and knew that the faction would not take kindly to the exposure. The council's reaction was swift and severe. They began issuing statements denouncing the leaked warning as baseless and malicious. In a public address, the council portrayed the warning as a desperate attempt by a rogue element within the council to undermine their efforts. They claimed that the information had been taken out of context and was designed to create unnecessary panic. The council's propaganda machine went into overdrive. News outlets and official channels were flooded with statements insisting that the council was united and committed to peace. They accused Emily and her allies of spreading falsehoods and trying to sabotage the council's work. Emily and her allies faced a wave of opposition. The council's attempts to discredit them were relentless. They found themselves under intense scrutiny, and their every move was watched and reported on. The council's faction worked hard to manipulate public perception, creating doubt and confusion about the legitimacy of the warning. As the council's campaign against the warning gained momentum, Emily and her team had to navigate a treacherous landscape. They worked behind the scenes to gather more evidence and support from sympathetic council members. They knew that exposing the full extent of the betrayal was crucial, but the Council's reaction made their task more difficult. One evening, Emily received an encrypted message from a sympathetic Council member named Lyra. Lyra was a respected diplomat from a neutral species and had been quietly investigating the Council's actions. Her message was brief but reassuring. "I've uncovered additional evidence. The faction's plans are more extensive than we thought. Meet me in the secure chamber tomorrow." Emily was relieved to receive Lyra's message. It meant that there were still allies within the Council who were willing to stand up against the corruption. She made plans to meet Lyra and review the new evidence, hoping it would provide a breakthrough in their struggle. The next day, Emily and Raj Patel arrived at the secure chamber, a hidden location accessible only to a select few. Lyra greeted them with a worried expression. "The faction is tightening its grip. They're trying to silence anyone who questions their motives. But I've managed to gather some critical documents that could help us." Lyra handed over a datapad containing detailed records of the faction's activities. The documents revealed additional instances of sabotage and manipulation, showing how deeply the faction had infiltrated the Council's operations. Emily and Raj reviewed the information, their eyes widening at the extent of the corruption. "This is exactly what we needed," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. "With this evidence, we can prove the Council's betrayal and rally more support." Lyra nodded. "But be cautious. The faction will not take kindly to this new evidence being made public. They'll likely intensify their efforts to discredit us." Emily and her team prepared to take the next steps. They needed to carefully plan how to release the new evidence and counter the Council's propaganda. The task ahead was daunting, but they were determined to see it through. The Council's reaction had been a harsh reminder of the challenges they faced. The faction's attempts to control the narrative and silence dissent were fierce, but Emily and her allies were resolved to fight back. The struggle to expose the betrayal and protect humanity was far from over, and every step forward was a battle in itself. As Emily and her team continued their efforts, they knew that the future of humanity depended on their ability to navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics. The Council's reaction had shown them the lengths to which the faction would go to maintain their power, but it had also strengthened their resolve. The fight for justice and survival was ongoing, and Emily was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The struggle to reveal the truth and ensure humanity's place in the galaxy was a battle that required courage, perseverance, and unwavering determination. Human preparation. The news had spread across Earth like wildfire. The Galactic Council's betrayal was no longer a secret, and humanity was now faced with a grave threat. The Council's faction had been working behind the scenes to undermine human progress, and the time had come to prepare for the possibility of a confrontation. In response to the warning, Earth's leaders convened an emergency meeting at the United Nations headquarters. The atmosphere was tense as diplomats, military officials, and scientists gathered to discuss the implications of the betrayal. Emily Carter, having been invited to brief the assembly, stood at the front of the room, her face a mix of determination and exhaustion. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Emily began, her voice steady. "The situation is dire, but we have a chance to protect ourselves and ensure our place in the galaxy." She explained the details of the Council's betrayal, presenting the evidence she and her allies had gathered. The room was silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. The Council's actions were not just a distant problem, they had the potential to impact every human being. General Davis, the head of Earth's defense forces, was the first to speak. "What are our options? How do we prepare for a possible attack or diplomatic fallout?" Emily looked at him, grateful for his directness. "We need to strengthen our defenses and prepare for both military and diplomatic scenarios. We have to be ready for anything." The meeting quickly turned into a flurry of activity. Plans were made to enhance Earth's defense systems and to coordinate with allied species who might be sympathetic to their cause. The military began mobilizing resources, conducting drills, and reviewing their strategies. Scientists worked on developing new technologies and improving existing ones to ensure they were prepared for any threats. On the diplomatic front, Earth's representatives reached out to their allies in the galaxy. They sought support from those who had expressed concern about the Council's actions and tried to build a coalition to counter the faction's efforts. The task was challenging. The Council's propaganda machine had already started to sway some opinions, making it difficult to secure reliable allies. Emily also worked to strengthen internal communication. She knew that clear, accurate information was crucial to maintaining morale and ensuring everyone was on the same page. Regular updates were sent out to keep the public informed about the steps being taken and to reassure them that efforts were underway to address the threat. Despite the efforts, not everyone was on board. Some people dismissed the warning as an exaggeration or a ploy to gain political advantage. Skepticism and fear were rampant, and there were voices calling for calm and restraint. Emily understood their concerns, but knew that hesitation could be dangerous. The stakes were too high to ignore. In addition to military and diplomatic preparations, Earth's leaders focused on internal security. They tightened protocols and increased vigilance to guard against any potential sabotage or infiltration. The threat was not just from the Council's faction, but also from those who might exploit the situation for their gain. The preparation efforts were intense and all-encompassing. Emergency drills became routine, and every sector of society was involved in some way. Schools, businesses, and communities all played a part in the readiness plan, learning how to respond to potential threats and how to support the overall effort. Emily found herself working long hours, coordinating between various agencies and overseeing the implementation of the new measures. Despite the pressure, she remained resolute. She knew that every decision made and every action taken would be critical in the coming days. One evening, Emily received an update from Dr. Raj Patel, who was overseeing technological advancements. Raj had been working on enhancing Earth's communication systems and developing new defensive technologies. He had a breakthrough to share. "Emily, we've made significant progress," Raj said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Our new communication system is nearly ready. It will help us stay in touch with our allies and manage our response more effectively. And the new defensive tech should give us an edge in any potential confrontation." Emily was relieved to hear the good news. Every advancement was a step toward ensuring humanity's safety and readiness. "That's excellent work, Raj. Let's make sure everything is ready for deployment as soon as possible." As the weeks passed, Earth's readiness efforts began to show results. The military was more prepared. The diplomatic efforts were gaining traction, and the public was becoming more aware of the situation. The initial shock had given way to a determined resolve. People were rallying behind the effort, ready to face the challenges ahead. Emily continued to monitor the situation closely, working with her allies and staying vigilant. She knew that the Council's faction was likely to escalate their actions in response to humanity's preparations. The fight to protect Earth and secure its place in the galaxy was far from over, but humanity was now in a stronger position to confront the threat. The sense of urgency and determination was palpable. Every person, from the highest-ranking officials to the everyday citizens, played a part in the preparation effort. The struggle against the Council's betrayal had become a unifying force, bringing humanity together in a way that had never been seen before. As the day of reckoning drew closer, Emily remained focused and resolute. She knew that the coming days would test humanity's resolve and resilience. But she also knew that they were not alone in this fight. The preparations were in place, the alliances were forming, and humanity was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The struggle to protect Earth and ensure its future in the galaxy was a battle that would define the course of history. And as Emily looked out at the world she had dedicated herself to protecting, she felt a deep sense of hope and determination. Humanity's spirit was strong, and together they would face the challenges and fight for their place in the stars. The first attack. The sky over Earth's major cities was clear and calm, but a sense of unease had settled over the planet. The preparations for potential conflict had been intense, but no one had anticipated that the threat would become real so quickly. It was early morning when the first signs of trouble appeared. Emily Carter was in her office reviewing the latest reports and coordinating with her team. The sound of alarms broke the early quiet, piercing through the building's usual hum. Her heart raced as she glanced at the emergency notifications flashing on her screen. "An attack?" Emily muttered, her voice tense. She quickly grabbed her communication device and contacted General Davis. "Emily, we have multiple reports of unidentified ships entering Earth's atmosphere," General Davis said, his voice steady but strained. "The preliminary scans indicate they're armed. We need to act fast." Emily's mind raced as she processed the information. The Council's faction had followed through on their threats, and now Earth was facing its first real test. She gathered her team and headed to the command center, where the situation was already in full swing. The command center was a hive of activity. Officers and technicians were working frantically, tracking the incoming ships and coordinating defensive measures. The view screens displayed images of the approaching vessels, their dark shapes ominous against the backdrop of space. Emily joined General Davis and his staff, quickly getting up to speed. The attack was unfolding in several locations simultaneously, making it difficult to respond effectively. Earth's defenses, though improved, were facing their first major test. "We've managed to intercept some of the incoming ships," Davis said, pointing to a display showing the location of the defensive forces. "But there are too many targets for us to handle all at once. We need to prioritize and focus on the most immediate threats." Emily nodded, her mind already racing through possible strategies. "Let's coordinate with our allies and use the new defensive tech we've developed. We need to maximize our response and minimize civilian casualties." As the command center worked to implement the defensive measures, Emily could see the strain on everyone's faces. The attack was proving to be more intense and coordinated than they had anticipated. The skies over Earth's major cities were filled with the flashing lights of battle as defensive ships engaged the attackers. The first wave of the attack targeted key military installations and communication hubs. The enemy ships fired powerful energy blasts, causing explosions and disruptions. The defensive forces scrambled to repel the attacks, using advanced shielding and countermeasures to protect their positions. Emily watched the situation unfold with a mix of anxiety and determination. She knew that the outcome of this battle would have far-reaching consequences. The attack was a clear message from the Council's faction, a demonstration of their resolve and their willingness to escalate the conflict. In the chaos of battle, Emily received a report from Raj Patel. "Emily, our new defensive tech is holding up well, but we're experiencing some interference. It looks like the attackers are using advanced jamming equipment." Emily's heart sank. The jamming could significantly impact their ability to coordinate and respond effectively. She relayed the information to General Davis, who immediately ordered his team to focus on countering the jamming signals. The battle continued to rage, with the attackers showing no signs of retreat. The defensive forces fought bravely, but the sheer number of enemy ships and the sophistication of their equipment made the fight challenging. Emily could see that the outcome was uncertain and the pressure was mounting. Amidst the turmoil, there were moments of heroism and resilience. Civilians and military personnel alike stepped up, working together to support the defensive efforts. The response from Earth's forces was coordinated and determined, but the scale of the attack was overwhelming. As the day wore on, the first wave of the attack began to wane. The defensive forces had managed to repel most of the immediate threats, but the damage was significant. Several key installations had been hit, and there were reports of casualties and destruction. Emily took a moment to catch her breath, her mind still racing. The attack had been a harsh reminder of the challenges they faced. The Council's faction was clearly willing to use extreme measures to achieve their goals, and Earth's defenses had been tested in ways they had never been before. She turned to General Davis and his team. "What's the current status? How are we handling the situation?" Davis looked tired but resolute. "We've managed to push back the attackers for now, but the situation is still fluid. We're assessing the damage and working to reinforce our defenses. We'll need to be prepared for additional attacks and continue coordinating with our allies." Emily nodded, her determination unwavering. "Let's make sure we use every resource we have. We need to stay ahead of the Council's faction and protect our people." The command center continued to buzz with activity as the team worked to stabilize the situation. Emily stayed focused, knowing that the battle was far from over. The first attack had shown them the reality of the threat they faced and the need for constant vigilance. As night fell, Earth's major cities were still reeling from the impact of the attack. The skies, once clear and calm, were now marked by the scars of battle. But amidst the destruction, there was a sense of resolve and unity. Humanity had faced its first major confrontation with the Council's faction, and while the outcome was uncertain, the spirit of resistance was strong. Emily looked out at the city lights from the command center, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. The attack had been a brutal wake-up call, but it had also galvanized Earth's determination to fight back. The struggle to protect their world and secure their place in the galaxy was just beginning, and Emily was prepared to lead the charge. Turning the tide. The aftermath of the attack left Earth reeling, but it also sparked a newfound resolve among its defenders. The initial wave had been brutal, but humanity was not ready to surrender. The first step in turning the tide was to regroup, assess the damage, and strategize for the next phase of the conflict. In the days following the attack, Emily Carter and General Davis worked tirelessly to coordinate recovery efforts. The command center was a hub of activity, with teams analyzing the damage, repairing critical infrastructure, and preparing for possible further assaults. Emily met with General Davis in the war room, where a massive holographic display showed the current status of Earth's defenses. The room was filled with officers and advisors, all focused on finding a way to turn the situation around. "We need to assess our weaknesses and reinforce our defenses," Emily said, her voice firm. "The Council's faction will not rest. They'll likely launch more attacks to test our resilience." General Davis nodded, his face set in determination. "We've identified the main points of vulnerability. Our defensive systems are stronger now, but we need to adapt and be ready for their next move." The teams worked around the clock, implementing new defensive measures and repairing damaged installations. They upgraded their shielding technology, improved their communication systems, and reinforced key military positions. The focus was on making Earth's defenses more robust and responsive. In parallel, Emily and her team continued their diplomatic efforts, reaching out to allies and sympathetic factions within the galaxy. The goal was to build a coalition that could provide support and counter the Council's influence. They coordinated with other species to share intelligence and resources, hoping to strengthen their position in the ongoing struggle. One evening, Emily received a secure message from Lyra, the sympathetic council member. The message contained crucial information about the Council's plans and weaknesses. It detailed the faction's supply lines and logistical support, revealing potential targets for disruption. "This could be our opportunity," Emily said, showing the message to General Davis. "If we can disrupt their supply lines, we might weaken their ability to sustain the attacks." General Davis agreed. "Let's develop a plan to target their logistics. We'll need to coordinate with our allies and ensure we have precise information before we strike." The planning began in earnest. Emily's team worked closely with military strategists to develop a series of coordinated strikes against the Council's supply routes. They also developed countermeasures to protect against any potential retaliation from the faction. As the plan took shape, Emily and her team prepared for the decisive operation. The goal was to hit the Council's supply lines hard, disrupt their operations, and force them to divert resources from their attacks on Earth. The operation was set in motion with a series of carefully timed strikes. The first wave targeted key supply depots and transport routes, causing significant disruption to the Council's logistics. The attacks were precise, aiming to minimize collateral damage and maximize the impact on the faction's ability to wage war. The Council's reaction was swift and aggressive. They launched counterattacks and attempted to retaliate, but the disruptions had caused significant delays and logistical problems. The faction struggled to maintain their offensive operations as their supply lines were disrupted. The tide of the conflict began to shift. Earth's defenders took advantage of the Council's difficulties, launching counteroffensives and regaining control of some of the strategic positions that had been lost during the initial attack. The new defensive measures proved effective, and the coordinated efforts with allies started to show results. In the command center, Emily watched the progress with a mixture of relief and determination. The operation had been successful in turning the tide, but she knew the battle was far from over. The Council's faction was still a formidable opponent, and there were likely more challenges ahead. As the days passed, the situation began to stabilize. The intensity of the attacks decreased, and Earth's defenses became more effective at repelling the enemy. The coalition of allies continued to provide support, and the combined efforts were gradually pushing back against the Council's faction. Emily took a moment to reflect on the progress made. The first attack had been a harsh test, but it had also galvanized Earth's resolve and brought the allies together. The struggle was far from over, but there was a renewed sense of hope and determination. In the command center, General Davis approached Emily with a grim but hopeful expression. "We've managed to turn the tide for now. The Council's faction is on the defensive, but we need to stay vigilant. They may regroup and try again." Emily nodded, her resolve unwavering. We'll continue to strengthen our defenses and work with our allies. The fight is far from over, but we've shown that we can stand against the Council's faction. The battle to protect Earth and secure humanity's place in the galaxy was ongoing, but the progress made was a testament to their resilience and determination. The fight had become a symbol of resistance and unity, and Emily knew that every step forward was a victory in itself. As she looked out at the city lights from the command center, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The struggle to turn the tide had been challenging, but it had also brought humanity together and forged stronger alliances. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was ready to face whatever came next with courage and determination. The final showdown. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as Earth prepared for the final showdown. The tide had turned in humanity's favor, but the Council's faction was not finished. They had regrouped and were preparing for one last, decisive assault. The coming battle would determine the fate of Earth and its place in the galaxy. Emily Carter and General Davis were in the command center, going over the final plans. The command center was a hive of activity, with screens displaying real-time updates and tactical maps showing the latest intelligence. The mood was tense but focused, as everyone knew that the upcoming confrontation would be critical. The Council's faction has concentrated their forces for a major offensive, General Davis said, pointing to the holographic map. They're aiming for a coordinated attack on our key defensive positions. Emily nodded, her face set in determination. We've fortified those positions and are ready for their assault. We need to ensure our allies are in place and that every defense system is operational. The final preparations were underway. Troops were stationed at strategic points, defensive systems were fully activated, and Allied forces were positioned to support Earth's defense. The plan was to create a multi-layered defense, with strongholds prepared to repel the incoming assault and counteroffensives ready to strike back. As night fell, the calm before the storm was palpable. Earth's cities were eerily quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by a tense silence. People went about their business, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the looming threat. The sense of unity and resolve was evident, as everyone understood the importance of the upcoming battle. At the command center, Emily and her team monitored the approaching enemy forces. The screens showed a massive armada moving through space, their dark shapes ominous against the backdrop of the stars. The Council's faction was bringing everything they had for this final push. We're detecting increased energy signatures from their ships, one of the technicians reported. They're preparing for a full-scale attack. Emily's heart raced as she processed the information. Get all units on high alert. We need to be ready for the initial wave and be prepared to respond to any unexpected maneuvers. The tension mounted as the enemy armada approached Earth. The defensive forces took their positions and the air was thick with anticipation. Emily and General Davis were at the heart of the command center, coordinating the final stages of the defense. The first wave of the attack hit with brutal force. The enemy ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, targeting Earth's defensive positions. The skies lit up with explosions as the defensive shields activated, deflecting the incoming fire. The initial impact was severe, but the defenses held strong. As the battle raged, Earth's forces responded with counterattacks. Fighter jets and defensive ships engaged the enemy, firing back with precision and determination. The coordinated response was effective, but the Council's faction was relentless, pushing forward with wave after wave of attackers. Emily watched the battle unfold with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The initial wave had been repelled, but the enemy was pressing on. The defensive lines were holding, but the fight was fierce and every second counted. In the midst of the chaos, the Allied forces launched their own offensive. The coalition's ships and troops joined the fray, targeting the Council's forces and providing critical support to Earth's defenders. The combined effort began to shift the balance, as the enemy faced pressure on multiple fronts. The final showdown was a brutal test of endurance and strategy. The Council's faction threw everything they had into the attack, hoping to overwhelm Earth's defenses and achieve their objective. But Earth's forces, bolstered by their allies and driven by a fierce determination to protect their home, fought back with unwavering resolve. As the battle continued, Emily received a crucial update from Raj Patel. We've identified a critical weakness in the Council's fleet. There's a central command ship coordinating their operations. If we can take it out, we might cripple their entire offensive. Emily relayed the information to General Davis. "We need to coordinate a strike on that command ship. It's our best chance to turn the tide and bring this conflict to a close." The final push was launched with precision. A team of elite pilots and specialized units targeted the central command ship, using every available resource to penetrate its defenses. The battle was intense, with enemy forces trying to protect their command ship at all costs. Emily watched as the assault on the command ship unfolded. The enemy defenses were formidable, but the combined effort of Earth's forces and their allies made a difference. The command ship was heavily damaged, and the control it had over the enemy forces began to falter. In a dramatic turn, the central command ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The destruction of the command ship sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The remaining forces, leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. The tide of the battle had decisively turned in Earth's favor. As the dust settled, the command center erupted in cheers. The final showdown had been won, and Earth had repelled the Council's faction's last desperate assault. The victory was hard won and came at a cost, but it was a testament to humanity's resilience and determination. Emily and General Davis surveyed the aftermath, their faces reflecting both relief and exhaustion. The battle had been fierce, but Earth had stood its ground and emerged victorious. The Council's faction had been pushed back, and Earth's place in the galaxy was secured, at least for now. The final showdown had shown the strength of humanity and its allies. The fight was far from over, but the victory was a powerful reminder of what could be achieved through unity and perseverance. As Emily looked out at the recovering cities and the stars beyond, she felt a deep sense of hope for the future. The battle was won, but the journey was just beginning. Aftermath and reflection. The aftermath of the final showdown left Earth both bruised and victorious. The skies, once filled with the smoke of battle, were now clear. The air was heavy with the scent of recovery and the quiet hum of a world slowly beginning to heal. The battle had been intense, but humanity had stood firm and emerged victorious. In the command center, the atmosphere was a mix of exhaustion and relief. The monitors, which had once displayed the chaos of battle, now showed recovery plans and messages of thanks from around the world. Emily Carter and General Davis were at the heart of the operations, overseeing the efforts to stabilize and rebuild. "Status report," Emily said, her voice tired but determined. General Davis looked at the latest updates. "The immediate threats have been neutralized. The enemy forces have retreated, and we've begun the process of assessing and repairing the damage." Emily nodded. "Good. We need to focus on both recovery and ensuring that we're prepared for any future threats. Let's get a detailed assessment of the damage and prioritize the most critical repairs." Teams of engineers, soldiers, and medical personnel worked tirelessly to address the aftermath of the battle. Major cities were dealing with the damage caused by the attacks, and the priority was to restore essential services and provide aid to those affected. The recovery effort was extensive, but there was a strong sense of unity and determination. Emily took a moment to reflect on the events. The battle had tested humanity's resolve, but it had also highlighted their strength and resilience. The unity displayed in the face of adversity was a powerful testament to the spirit of humanity. As she walked through the command center, she noticed the faces of her team members, tired but proud. They had been on the front lines of the conflict, working around the clock to ensure the safety of their world. The sense of camaraderie and shared purpose was evident. Later that day, Emily attended a global address to the public. The event was broadcasted worldwide, and people from every corner of the earth tuned in to hear the latest updates and reflections on the conflict. Emily stood before the camera, ready to address the world. "People of Earth," Emily began, her voice steady, "we have faced a grave threat and emerged victorious. The battle was fierce, and the cost was high, but our resolve and unity have carried us through. The Council's faction attempted to undermine us, but we have proven that humanity stands strong." The speech was met with a mix of applause and tears. People were grateful for the victory, but also mourned the losses and the damage caused. Emily acknowledged the sacrifices made and the challenges ahead. "We have much to rebuild and heal," Emily continued, "but let us remember the strength we have shown and the support we have received from our allies. This conflict has brought us together and reminded us of the power of unity. Together we will rebuild and ensure that we are prepared for whatever challenges the future may bring." The address was a moment of collective reflection and hope. It acknowledged the difficulties faced and celebrated the achievements. The victory over the Council's faction was a significant milestone, but the road to recovery was just beginning. In the days following the address, Earth's leaders and citizens focused on rebuilding and recovery. The damage from the attacks was extensive, but there was a concerted effort to restore normalcy and improve the world's defenses. The experience had highlighted the importance of preparedness and cooperation, and there was a renewed commitment to strengthening both. Emily and General Davis continued their work, overseeing the recovery efforts and planning for future security. They were in constant contact with their allies, working to maintain the relationships forged during the conflict and ensure ongoing support. One evening, Emily received a message from Lyra, the sympathetic council member. Lyra expressed gratitude for the opportunity to work together and offered continued support in addressing any lingering threats or issues. "Thank you, Lyra," Emily replied. "Your support has been invaluable. We look forward to working together to ensure peace and stability in the galaxy." The message from Lyra was a reminder of the alliances formed and the potential for future collaboration. The conflict had been a harsh lesson, but it had also opened new avenues for cooperation and understanding. As Earth began to recover, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The victory over the Council's faction was a significant achievement, but it was also a reminder of the fragility of peace. The experience had brought humanity together and strengthened their resolve to protect their world and secure their place in the galaxy. Emily looked out at the city lights from her office, feeling a deep sense of hope. The road ahead was filled with challenges, but humanity had shown that it could rise to meet them. The struggle had been difficult, but the lessons learned and the unity achieved were powerful foundations for the future. The battle against the Council's faction had been a test of humanity's spirit, and it had revealed their strength and resilience. As the world worked to rebuild and recover, there was a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to facing whatever challenges lay ahead. The conflict had ended, but the journey of recovery and growth was just beginning. Humanity had faced a great threat and emerged stronger, and the future was filled with possibilities. The fight for peace and security continued, but the spirit of unity and determination would guide them forward.